In this tutorial, we are going to use both the video timeline and the frame animation modes in order to make a seamless and endlessly looping GIF animation of this poor man. So we're going to grab this clip and make this happen. We've talked a lot about where you can get free and copyright-free image files, but as far as video files go, you can also do Creative Commons searches for videos on services such as Vimeo. Occasionally, videos on YouTube will also allow you to download them, and there are some tools for downloading videos from YouTube that are published by third parties. The Prelinger, which I may say wrong, the Prelinger archives are part of the Internet Archive organization, and they have a ton of old videos that you can both watch and download. They have a great series on personal hygiene that I think everyone should watch, so we have a less smelly world. The big things to pay attention to, and most of you will have seen this in class, this is just in case somebody hasn't, is you go down to the video files, and I'm going to suggest, because these are GIFs and they're going to be small and we don't need them to be huge, if you end up using video from this source, the 512 kilobyte MPEG-4 file is going to be your best bet. It pops up a little thing that shows you that it's 60.3 megabytes. If you look at the high res, that's 155.2 for this particular file. Right? And there's other options. MPEG-2 is enormous. But really the high-res MPEG-4 or the 512 kilobyte MP4 are the two that are going to work best for you. Okay, so let's get on to the tutorial. Once you've downloaded the file, all you have to do is go down to Open and scroll down until you find your file. Now, I know that I put mine here. So this is science 1956_10, blah, 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 blah. Right, this is the movie I'm using. And it's an MP4 file. MP4 is one of several standard video codecs that Adobe Photoshop is capable of decoding. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. And when I do that, you'll see that it opens a video timeline. I have one video layer on here. And as I scroll over, this is the video. If I hit play, you will even likely hear audio. And so what I need to do at this point is just use my playhead to scrub to the part of the video that I want to extract. Right? This whole video is far too long to turn into a GIF. It's over 15 minutes, I believe. It's a long video. So I only really want one part in here. There's a couple great little moments, but the one that this is really weird too, this like fade from this guy with this thing on to this little dude floating up and down. I don't know. It's weird. So really I want to find this guy, and I'm going to go for at the start I'm going to go for the very last frame before he dissolves into this weird floaty guy in the tank. I don't even know what that is. And then I'm going to grab this end of the video clip. I'm just going to drag it over, right? I'm going to shorten this video clip. And then I'm going to go ahead and scroll over until I get to the point where it suddenly switches to his view. Now, when I do this, I'm actually going to zoom in more because I want to make sure I get all the frames to start with, right? So now I'm just going to pull back a few, and actually I was on the very last frame. That's excellent. Okay. If you're not, just drag your playhead over at 1 or 2 frames and you'll get there. So then I'm going to pull this side over, and now I have this tiny little clip, and when I do that, I just want to make sure everything's playing right. All right, so now here's my video. And even this is too long, right? This is probably 20 seconds long. I'm about halfway through. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be about 20 seconds. And so even within this, I need to find the moment that is just sort of perfect. And because I've done this before, I already know the part that I really like. And I'm going to expand this a little bit so I can have a bit more fine-tuned control. And I really like this moment where he looks off to the side of the camera, blinks again, right? And when he blinks, he's almost right at full capacity for his little breather thing, right? So what I want is I just want this first few seconds here. It's probably somewhere right around 6 seconds. He closes his eyes and then opens them again. And once they're fully open is when I'm going to decide to that's where the point I'm going to cut this. Along with being able to grab the ends and pull them down, you can also use the scissors. And if you click on this scissors button, what it's going to do is anywhere that your playhead is, it's going to chop this into a new clip, and it's actually going to create a new layer with the subdivision, right? So these are the same exact video files, but all it's doing is it's showing me this video track here is showing me this window, and this video track here is showing me the rest of it, right? And I don't actually need that. I was just showing you that you could clip things. So I'm going to delete that. All right, so we've got this guy breathing. And if I go ahead and hit play, eventually it'll play back in real time. Right? But there's a little bit of a hiccup when it goes from the last frame to the first frame, right? Because he's not standing in the exact same position. And so what we really need to do to make this seamlessly loop is we need to take the frames that we've got here, and then we need to copy them and reverse the order that they're in, and then play the whole thing back as a single clip. And then the last frame is going to be the same as the first frame. All right, so it'll seamlessly play. Now, the issue is, what would be great is if I could just click on this track and Adobe Photoshop would allow me to reverse it. Unfortunately, we can't do that, so we have to take a couple extra steps. And so the way I'm going to show you these extra steps is going to teach us a few more things about both this animation mode and frame animation mode. Okay, so now we need to export this file so then we can re-import it into the frame animation mode. Because if I was to click on switching to frame animation down here in the bottom corner of the screen, it's actually just going to turn this into a static image, because it won't break the video apart when it does that transition. And that's to save Photoshop from crashing and dying a horrible death if you clicked on that button when you had like a 15-minute long movie in here, which if it's running at 30 frames a second times 15 minutes, you get, several thousand layers, and most computers would not handle that very well. So that said, what we have to do is we have to go up here to File, go to Export, and under Export there's tons of different options. The one we want is Render Video. This is going to allow us to export this video file as this little clip as its own independent video, right? This could play back on any device. It'll have sound, and by default size should be set to the document size, and the document frame rate should be set to the frame rate should be set to the document frame rate. We're going to make one change to this file, and that is we're going to make it 15 frames per second. This is going to basically have the number of frames that we're going to use, that we're going to be grabbing from when we go to the next step, which is going to be much nicer on the computer. So I'm going to go ahead and name this Demo 2 because although you haven't seen it, I just made a mistake and now I have to make Demo 2. And we're going to do all frames. Just some other notes here. If you have set your work area to a different size than the length of your full video, it's going to default to selecting work area, and it will tell you what frames it's using. In this case, the work area is the full size of the clip, so it's the same frames. You can also define here, you can say I want to go from frame 5 to frame 35, right? So you have several ways to say what part of the video you want to export. Everything else I'm going to leave the same. I'm going to hit render. Now, once I've rendered the video, I can go ahead and import it. It seems totally redundant. We're not actually going to be importing the video file we just exported into the same video, at least not yet. What we're going to be doing is we're going to import video frames to layers. And when we do this, it's going to bring this into another file. So I'm going to select demo 2 because that's the one I want and hit OK. And we're just going to leave these as the default settings, but I want to show you several things you can do here. First, this is the playhead. This shows us if we were to open a longer video file and wanted to extract a small chunk of it here rather than doing the steps here, we can do that, right? And we can actually grab these little black corners, and these are the parts that define how much of the video is going to be grabbed. Now, we've already done the work in here, and this is a much more precise way to get to the exact frame that we want to start and end this animation with. This is much more blunt, right? It gets you in the range, and then you have to delete several frames, or maybe you have to add a frame on one side or the other once you get done. And then this limit to every 2 frames, you can set this to whatever you want. If you want something to look like you've sped it up like really high speed, or you want to shoot video of yourself and then have it kind of look like a stop motion animation, this is a great way to do that. You can eliminate every 3rd frame or every 5th frame or every 2nd frame, and you get this really kind of jerky motion. It's a nice effect. We're going to leave it alone, and we're just going to say make frame animation yes, and hit OK. And depending on the size of your video, this might take a very long time. Because currently I have an animation that is 103 frames long, which means I have 103 layers. At the end of this, we're going to have 206, well, actually 204 layers. So let's dive in, right? Now, initially, when I open this up, you'll see the play button is not letting me do anything. All I have to do is click on one of the frames in the timeline, and it's going to let me play it, right? That's just the way it works, right? So now I can watch this, and you'll notice this looks a lot slower than it does in the video timeline, and that's because it is definitely not playing back in real time. Okay, so all of that being said, the next few steps are pretty simple. We need to select all the frames. So we go to our panel menu, select all frames. Then we need to copy the frames. Now, with the timeline, Command-C and Command-V or Control-C and Control-V don't copy the frames. You actually have to go and manually click on the thing that says Copy Frames. And then once you've done that, you have to click on it again and go back and say Paste Frames. And by default, it's going to ask you if you want to paste it after the selection. That's exactly what we want to do. And so I'm going to do that. Now, before I click on anything else, we're going to do one more step. And I'm just sliding this so you can see all of the frames that I just added are still selected, right? That's very good, because what I want to do 2 things. First, I need to note where the center of the animation is, right? In this case, 103 is the last frame of the original sequence. 104 is the first frame of the sequence I just copied, right? We want to make sure we take a note of that. And then once we've done that, we want to go in here and we just click on reverse frames, and that allows us to reverse the order of the last of any of the frames that we have selected, right? And because we want the first 103 frames to play as they should, and we want the last 103 frames to play backwards, by not clicking on anything, having 104 to the end selected already makes our life a lot easier. So I click reverse frames. And now I want to go back to the center of this animation. Now, you could go through and play this right now, but before you do, I want to show you that there are little hiccups both at the beginning of the animation, beginning and end of the animation, and in the middle, right? These 2 frames, 103 and 104, which is right where the repetition happens, are exactly the same. If I move here, you can see this tiny little twitch, and if I go from 104 to 105, you see another tiny little twitch, right? But there's no motion in here. That means that this is going to look like the the animation is lagging right here, right? It's going to look like it's frozen for just a split second. So we're just going to delete one of these frames, right? Get that guy out of there. It'll automatically smush everything else over. And then I'm just going to go to the end of the animation and I'm going to grab the last frame as well, because the last frame and the first frame are also identical. And so when it loops from beginning to end, it's going to have that same lag. And you want to eliminate that as much as possible. So I've eliminated those two. You can play this through if you want to and see if you can catch any lag when it goes through. It seems to be going really, really smoothly at this point. He looks really bored and kind of upset that he had to be the one chosen to breathe into this thing. Okay, so I've got my sequence both going in forward and reverse. Now at this point, I could go to export and save for web and save a version of this as a GIF animation. However, a lot of times this reversing motion is something that you want to do as part of a larger project you're working on, or it's a small part of, maybe you have multiple video layers and this is just one of them that you wanted to have going forward and reverse, or maybe you just want to reverse it, right? So what we need to do is we need to export this again and then bring it back into the original version of this with the video timeline, so I can show you how to add another video to a video timeline. Okay, so let's go ahead and export this guy. We're going to say export and not save for web. We're going to go down to render video. And I'm going to call this demo out 2. I'm going to leave everything else the same. I could change this back to 29.97 frames per second because that's what the video timeline frame rate is, but it doesn't seem to care too much if I leave it at 15. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it. I'm going to hit render. It's going to think about it for a bit, and then it's going to be done. So now I'm going to go back to my original where I've got, right, this is the original file that I grabbed from. And so now we need to add this video that we've reversed back into our original video. I don't know how many times I've tried to do this, but you don't go to File, Import, and there's no option here for bringing another video file in. What you have to do is you have to go to Layer, go down to Video Layers, and go to New Video Layer from File. And when you click on that, it'll bring up this box, and then I can click on Demo Out 2 and hit Open. And when I do that, it's going to create a new video layer, layer 2. It's going to drop my video clip in there, and it's going to drop it wherever, it's going to start wherever my playhead was, right? So my playhead was, I don't know, 1.5 seconds in, and so that's where it decided to drop it. Now, that doesn't mean it's stuck there. I can always grab this video layer and I can drag it wherever I want to. So I can pull this up to frame 1. Now I can go ahead and hit play, and I can just make sure that this is working effectively. Yep, he looks totally bored. One thing to note about video files is when you open up the options here, right, you do have this altered video layer, right? This is just like the hand-drawn animation, except it has video content. So this means that you can do hand-drawn stuff on top of existing video. Or you could come in here and use any of these other tools on this video frame by frame. So in this case, just to quickly show you how that works, I'm actually going to use the burn tool, which is over here on the side of the screen. And the burn tool darkens things. That's what it does, that's its job. And so instead of doing the highlights, I'm going to do the shadows. I'm going to leave the exposure at 100%. And for whatever reason, I'm just going to go in and start darkening him up. I want him to be a little bit more contrasty than he is before, right? And so there, I've done it to 1 frame. I move this forward. You'll see that I get my gray mark, it looks like it actually applied it to 2 layers, oddly enough. All right, so there we go. Got him in there. I'm going to go ahead and continue to darken him on every single frame. So this also means that if I wanted to color his eyes red or do some other sort of minor, coloring, here's this big green brush. Maybe I want to use overlay and maybe shrink my green brush a little bit. And maybe I just want to go in and go back on these frames I've already edited, but maybe I just want to give him green hair. I don't know why, but I do. All right, so I can just go from frame to frame. Now you'll notice that with a lot of these, in this case, when I'm moving this forward, it's like I've already colored in a frame before I got there. And that's because this is 15 frames per second. So what it's done is it's just extended each frame to be 2 frames in this animation, more or less, right? So now if I draw in green hair on here and then push this over, it'll automatically update that frame to have green hair as well, right? And maybe I'm going to go down to his eyes for this frame and jump up to frame 8 and do his eyes again. Go to frame 10. Oh, his eyes are closed. Maybe I should leave him alone at this point. Okay, so I've modified a few frames at the beginning of this animation. If I don't pull the work area in, this is going to take forever to play back. So I'm going to pull the work area in close. I'm going to hit play, right? And so you can see those changes that I made are reflected in the video. One last thing we need to cover in the video timeline is that even though we can't reverse a video file, we can adjust the speed that the video file plays back at. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the visibility of my altered video off because we don't really need that on right now. So this video clip is currently 13 seconds long. It's a pretty long clip, and he's breathing in really slowly, right? Which could be good for comedic effect, but it might be nice to see him hyperventilate as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the speed, and that's pretty simple to do. We just need to go down to the very end of the video clip, right? So make sure you've zoomed out enough that your whole video clip is viewable. And then you'll see that there's this arrow here right at the end. Go ahead and click on that. And when you do that, it tells you the duration of the video and also the speed that it's currently playing back at. Now, unfortunately, these things aren't linked. So when I make this go faster, in this case, this is as long as this clip is. When I make it go faster, it's going to shrink. But if I change the duration, that's not necessarily going to make it go quicker. It's just going to truncate the video. So I'm going to change the speed to somewhere around, why not just blast it out of the park? Let's go all the way up to 400%, right? So now it's only 3.4 seconds long. Great. All right, so this is going to go really quickly, and I'm actually going to adjust the work area as well, because otherwise it's going to be playing this video and then it's going to jump to the next one. So let's bring this in. Let's go ahead and hit play. And all right, so he's breathing much more quickly now. Now, the nice thing about speeding video up like this as well is it makes the file size smaller, right? The less frames you have, the smaller the file is going to be, the more likely it will be to succeed when you go to turn it into a GIF. Okay, so to export this video file that we have now shrunk down, we're going to go to Export, Save for Web. It's going to think about it for a bit, and then it'll generate a preview. And once it does that, we're going to go ahead and everything should be okay. If this is the first time that you've created a GIF animation since you've had the software open, specifically if you're in the video timeline mode, your animation looping options, even if you have loop set down here, it's going to be set to once in this dialog box, and you're going to need to change it to forever. And once you do that, you can hit save. And I'm going to call this weird. My cursor is not doing what I want it to. There we go. So we're going to name this demo fast.gif, and I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Illustrator in Chrome. And the best way to do that is to go to File, Open File, find your demo.fast.gif, and open it up. And here he is. And you can see this playing back in real time. Okay, and that's it for this demo. In the next demo, we'll look at how to do transitions between video layers and deal with opacity on video.